Bem-vindos e bem-vindas a mais um episódio do The Hub Talks. Estamos aqui hoje com Ashik Philip, mais um convidado gringo do nosso podcast. Ashik, it is a pleasure to have you here. E como vocês perceberam, o nosso episódio de hoje também será em inglês. Então, se você ainda não tá com aquele inglês tinindo, não se preocupe, abre o nosso link do YouTube e vai assistir lá com as legendas em português. So, transitioning to our English audience, welcome to the Hub Talks. It is a pleasure having you here with us today, especially you, Ashik. It is a pleasure having you at the Hub Talks this morning. Well, it's actually afternoon already.
This afternoon, that's correct.
Wherever you are, whatever time it is, don't worry. We welcome anyone listening from any time zone. So, Ashik, you actually come from a different time zone. You flew all the way in from Houston. Tell us about that, how you ended up here.
Sure, yeah. Thankfully, Houston is primarily a pretty big hub for flights. So we get all kinds of stuff coming through in and out of Houston.
Did you fly through Dallas
Actually,
airport?
no, direct flight on United from Houston to Sao
Houston
Paulo.
to Sao Paulo, okay.
And unfortunately, it was one of those red-eye flights, so you're just flying straight through the night.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like the whole time you were on the plane, you were either sleeping or you were dreaming of sleeping. So it was kind of a weird time. Like, you got there and you're like, what's happening? I'm here already. So I enjoyed it. It was a good trip. And also the best part is that like you had the whole day ahead of you when we got to Sao Paulo. So it was like, get to the hotel, throw your bags down, and then start walking around the city and seeing what else is out there. So,
You know, I do have a funny story. It's actually not a funny story. It's just a curious story to tell about hotels and checking in and stuff. But I'll bring that up in a minute. I just wanted to let the audience know how you ended up in here, like all the way from Houston directly to Guarulhos and how that came to be. So, Ashik, you do have a background and you're currently working as an engineering in the oil and gas industry, correct?
yeah, that's correct. I'm an electrical engineer.
Congratulations,
Oh,
by
thank
the way. We know it takes a lot to work in that industry, so congrats.
Thank you.
But you are here currently on behalf of the Rice MBA program.
Correct. Yeah, I'm just recently, just about a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago now, started the Master's of Business Administration program at Rice University. Rice has several MBA programs, so I'm in the professional weekend program. So basically every other weekend we go to class. So for every other Friday and Saturday, we're in class for either 5 hours or 10 hours. Which is definitely an experience, I would say.
You're like, yeah, I do have some free weekends. Might as well do an MBA program.
Exactly. Yeah, you really learn just how to do time management because I was definitely not good at it before.
Perhaps the plane was the most sleep you got during the entire MBA.
I know. It was really one of those things where I didn't really know what I was getting into when I signed up. Like it seemed like a good idea and it was a great opportunity of definitely. But it was one of those like, okay, let's just see what this is. And it's definitely a lot of work.
And now that you see it, you're like, I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm not sure.
It's been interesting because whenever I was thinking about joining, I was asking a lot of people who had gotten MBAs, like, hey, was this like worth it? And, around like, at least in the States, when you hear talk about MBAs, most of the time you hear like, oh, you don't need it. It's not needed anymore. It's a pretty antiquated degree. But when you talk to people who actually got MBAs, they said they loved it. They had a great time doing it. It was definitely worth it. And maybe it didn't enhance their career in the ways that they thought it would be in the short term. But in the long term, it really helped them kind of understand like where they wanted to take their careers.
Interesting.
And I think like in the first year, it's been good just because I think I've realized that I'm more passionate about things non-engineering than I initially thought.
Beware oil and gas. You're about to lose in engineering.
And so that's been good. And it's also helped me kind of see what else is out there from a broader perspective. So I think that's been exciting. And Rice has been a great school to attend for sure.
And I think perhaps not engineering college, but in law school, we don't have a lot of management or business classes. I don't know if you have the same experience, but perhaps the MBA would help us like broaden our views business-wise.
Yeah, whenever I first joined, I didn't know anything about accounting or finance or marketing or anything like that. All of that was completely brand new to me. All I knew was how to do math.
Okay.
So that was what I was really good at.
I think you're one step ahead of lawyers.
Right. And so I enjoyed the math aspect. And so going into business school, there's a lot of other skills and qualities that people really value. And I've enjoyed kind of sharpening those skills, learning about those other disciplines. And it's been a good time. It's been difficult, no doubt, but it's been fun. And I've enjoyed like spending the time with the cohort for sure.
Oh, cool. And I do notice that you have like a very mixed group within the MBA. So
Yeah.
you yourself are an engineer, but I've met people coming from like architecture or marketing background
Yeah.
or business backgrounds. Do you think that's a plus for the program?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things about the MBA programs is that it's a great way for people to pivot their career.
Okay.
There have been people who have come in as teachers that would teach kindergarten and then will transition into investment banking.
Oh, cool.
And it's just like a complete 180 in terms of career. And there are all kinds of people in our cohort that are like that are, whether they're currently in business, they're currently in engineering. I would say primarily in MBA programs, it's mostly engineers, I would say. But it comes from all over, and it really gives everybody that next step to move into something different completely for their career. And really kind of enhances it if they're looking to make a switch.
I was talking to this colleague that comes from an engineering background, but he's mostly in like computer sciences at this point. We were chatting this morning about AI, how it works, and I mentioned that I come from a legal background and I don't have any computer science experience in particular, like not privately or academically. But I was telling him what I think the challenges are for the legal sector while using AI or leveraging with AI or coping with AI, whatever you want to call it. And he was like, you do have like a very different view than I would expect from a lawyer facing AI. And I think a lot of that is because I got to gather from the view of others, like engineers, that you have like a way of seeing the world that is so different from people coming from other sciences like history, law, arts even. So do you think you are starting to also change your view a little bit, like not being tinted perhaps or enhanced, whatever you want to call it, from your college?
Yeah, I would say, Isabella, you hit the nail on the head in terms of what the program has kind of done for me, is that I just see things differently now. For example, like I didn't understand anything about marketing before taking this first year of school. And now, like when I go to like a fast food restaurant, for example, I'm like understanding like, oh yeah, this is why they advertise this certain way, or this is what they're trying to do in terms of like gaining, what's important to their customers, or they're really kind of keying in on those like small things that companies do that may not mean anything to like most consumers, but it's actually a pretty important and pretty unique thing that's going on. And I've enjoyed it. I think it's just really helped me kind of view things in a new lens that I previously wasn't doing it, whereas it was primarily from the technical side that I was looking at things before.
And perhaps then you may agree with me that I think one way of leveraging our knowledge is actually finding ways to present it differently or looking at the same things differently. Because what I see, especially coming from the legal sector, is that you will have those deep experts. So people who are into I don't know, in legal, you could be a tax expert in this particular tax itself based on a single state. So you are very, very good at that. And I don't know if I could do that myself. I'm not one of those hyper specialists.
Yeah.
I just like looking at the same thing from various different perspectives.
Yeah.
And it also changes what you do with the thing once you start looking at it from different lenses.
Right.
Do you feel the same at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's so many different aspects of how things come together, especially if you work on, like, if you look at the project that we had just been working on. We had looked for all the way from things like competitor analysis to like cultural analysis to, how would technically from a digital marketing side, like what needs to happen for all this, market expansion stuff to come together. And it really does like open your eyes in terms of like what else could you, touch on to really be your benefit for a project like that.
That's cool. But since you mentioned the project, let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
So you're here on behalf of a project for Vita, so our
Yes.
legal design company. And it has been a pleasure hosting you here at the office this week. And I hope to see a very interesting presentation later on,
We're
which
hoping
will
so,
not
too.
be released to the public, but perhaps some short snippets of it would be interesting to have.
Yeah.
But how did you find working on this project? How was the challenge itself? I mean, perhaps you didn't even know of legal design before you started it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was definitely one of those things where we got the company, we're like, legal design.
What is that?
What is that? And so we spent probably the first initial moments
What's
thinking.
like, are there illegal designs?
My favorite part is like when we tell people like what company we are. Oh, we're Vita Visual Law, and they're like, what is that? And so like we always use that cell phone contract example that you had brought up to us. We felt like that was like the easiest way to describe it to someone. Like, oh, they take like a contract and they make it into an infographic that's much easier to digest.
So if you want to see the contract project in particular, just let us know in the comments, but I'll make sure to drop a link as well.
Yeah, no, but otherwise with the project, it's been interesting because we've gotten, it's been pretty much, figure it out for yourself. And I think the idea generally
learn as you go.
You learn as you go, and you're gonna make mistakes, and they want you to make mistakes. And I think that's great. That like, this is the time where like you can go experiment and just see what you want to do, and see what works, see what doesn't work. You'll get some feedback from our professors and staff.
You feel like a teenager all over
again.
Like
the teenager all over again, right? And you're making all kinds of mistakes, and for the most part, like the stakes are pretty low. Like we're trying to do this as a learning experience with the intent of hopefully helping Vita. But it's been an interesting experience in the sense that like you almost get to see like how you were thinking about things a year ago before we started the program versus now, and what kinds of skills and all the stuff that we had learned over the course of the year that we can apply to like the project right now. So everything from doing financial break-even analysis to like marketing and customer value. And
I love how you just say marketing. Like it's a monster.
Oh, it's a beast. But no, it's been a great opportunity. I mean, also just like learning about the European markets and the various competitors that are in the European markets. It's been a really cool experience. Something that came together really quickly. I mean, we only started on this 3 months ago now.
Oh
it
yeah,
kind of flown by.
And it feels like forever, right?
I know.
But since you mentioned one of our projects, and I think we have this project in our website, so you can just go out and check them out. It's the Telefonica project, so Tim's project. It's in our website. You can check it out. It's super cool. We received awards for that project, particularly the Clock Legal Innovation Awards. And it is one fantastic project itself. But I remember looking at your face when we were actually we were going through this contract of employment that was transformed through legal design. And you were looking at it and going like, oh, this would change my entire employee experience.
When I joined my company as like a 22-year-old, I mean, there was really nothing more on my mind other than I just graduated college and all the fun things that happened with college at that time. But when they send me a contract like that, I'm just looking at it like, hey, yeah, sure, good enough, sign. And it's like, yep, good. But when I saw that, like what Vita had created for an employment contract perspective, and how all of the key information is highlighted, you know exactly what you need to know, what's important to you. There's really no confusion about it, because I feel like sometimes like those like legal documents or even employment contracts, for example, it's really a lot of text, just a white page with a lot of text on it, and it's easy to get lost, especially if you're a young person who doesn't really know what they're looking at. So a visual infographic of highlighting the key information was really useful. I thought it was really useful, something that I don't understand why more companies don't use, because it's just an easier way to it's just a simple thing that can be done that can really make the end user happy.
And you as an end user yourself, perhaps you could answer this question, because one of the questions that we get from lawyers is that, well, this would lead to people trusting the document less, like it looks less professional. Mm-hmm. And at times what we receive as feedback from the users is actually the opposite. So what you mentioned as it having the most important information highlighted makes it easier for you to understand the document. And so do you think that enhances the trust that you have in that document? Do you think... I think it's a difficult balance between it looking professional, and I think it means actually more traditional than professional, but let's leave it at that. and transparency. Because when you have the information highlighted, like you kind of know this company, they're not trying like to rob me. They're not trying to hide in opt-ins and opt-outs in this contract. So do you think there's a balance in there? There's no balance at all. It's just transparent or unprofessional. What is your opinion?
I mean, I think from my perspective, and maybe this is not the right perspective, is that whenever I get, pages and pages of text, like a terms of service, for example, I just assume something is being hidden to get me, like almost like a gotcha statement type of thing.
Yeah.
And so when I see something like a visual law or legal design type of document where it's put very in layman's terms, we talk about like plain English.
Yeah.
It makes me have that comfort that, okay, like they want to tell me what's important and like this is what you need to know that is relevant to you. It may make an impact on like your decision to say yes or no, whatever it is. And they kind of have that reassurance that like, okay, like they're not trying to get me at the end of the day. And so I like that part about it. And I can understand like why people would want like the full text because they want to know all the specific details. But I would say the vast majority of people don't read the entire document. So like just for like the normal person, the layman, it's perfect. I would love that to see it more often.
Oh, I'm happy that perhaps this is not the right perspective, but if it is the perspective of every user, then it is the perspective that we have to lean in for, right?
Right, yeah.
And that actually circles back to the one curious fact that I had to tell in the very beginning. So it's actually a story, I think it is described in Tim Brown's design thinking book, and it's about the Marriott hotel chain.
Oh yeah.
We
did a case about that.
They have like so many of those, but this one in particular is about how perhaps the company's view does not necessarily reflect the user's view. Well, there are many of those described in that book, but this one, I always remember that one in particular because it is about the check-in process in hotels. And when you were speaking of like flying in from Houston and just going in the hotel, it was just reminding me of that story and that case in particular. So what happened was that the Marriott Hotel had this hypothesis that the check-in process was the most important moment during a person's trip, or at least during their stay in the hotel. So they decided to invest a lot of efforts and develop guidelines and playbooks for the check-in moment itself. So when you go to the desk office, the first time that you check in, that's Marriott's hypothesis on where we should put in all of the money. But they hired IDEO to consult and help in on that project. And IDEO did a very thorough research with users going sometimes even from the airport all the way to the check-in desk with users, but also following them from the check-in desk all the way to their rooms. And what they discovered during that research is that people were actually very stressed out about the check-in process. And the only moment where they were truly relieved was when they actually were in the room. So that moment when you finally enter the room and you just put your luggage on one side, you're checking on the other, and you just like throw yourself in bed. They call that, I think it's like the breath moment. Like you just
made it.
The silence just like, whew, I made it. Because like everything can still go wrong during check-in, right? I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but at times people it's overbooked or they lost your reservations or whatever, and you're just still stressed, right? And I think this is refreshing for lawyers because sometimes what we think matters and what we think is important, and it's not as important for users. So it's just highlighted as top button, like very front page of the text. And users are just like, but how much is it?
Right. Yeah.
I just want to know.
Sometimes that's all you want to know. Like, what is the actual price? Tell me that. Like,
and the longer you go, I think it's at times we're trying to be thorough with it. Like, I have to let you know every implication of it. So lawyers are perfectionists, but most people, they're just agile. Like, just give me what I want to know, because otherwise I'll think you're trying to stall me.
Right. Yeah.
So it's curious to know that other people, regular people, common people, laymen, non-lawyers actually do feel the same, that it could be better.
Yeah. This is a little bit off topic, but I do have a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what was your perception of us like when we first started?
Oh, that's a great question.
And how has that evolved over the last, we met 6 times, and then we actually came in country. So it's quite a few meetings. And what have we thought about the project? Has it kind of gone as expected? A little bit surprising. I'm curious about that.
Just an explanation for our audience. So I've been accompanying the Gaúchos do Texas group from the MBA at Rice for 6 encounters. Has that been 3 months now?
Yeah, it's been 3 months. I think we started in like early April-ish.
Yeah.
So
it's been a ride. And so we decided on weekly meetings to develop the project and the challenge that we did together. And I've been personally involved in that a lot. And this is their week in Brazil, constructing and leading up to the final presentation, which in our case will be this afternoon.
Yep.
Perhaps now that you're watching it, this might have been done already and you can already see those snippets of it.
Yeah, Professor, if you're watching, we want an A.
This is the time to request. The episode will be released 6 months after you've got the A.
Yeah, right.
But the A is there. So, Professor, they do deserve the A. Jokes aside, I think personally it has been very interesting working with you, especially from our perspective as a company. It has pushed us towards a dream, so towards a goal that unless you were involved, perhaps we wouldn't be doing it this early on. And your involvement has pushed us into being more involved and working towards that goal. And so I think from the company side, this is a great take. We also got amazing feedback from people from a different country, which I think also adds up to that cultural shock that we might have at times. And me personally, I think I've just had a lot of fun working with you.
Yeah.
Like, you have been an amazing group to work with. You're easy to work with. At times you will find teams that struggle to work together, and looking from the outside, it feels like you all worked very well with one another. And as like imagining you as a consulting firm for us, I'd say you've been doing a pretty great job. I'm still looking forward for the final presentation. So I can promise that it is all perfect yet,
Right.
but perhaps soon enough. But I mean, I've seen your work so far, so I expected only great things. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Hopefully it was what you expected. I don't know, like, I'm sure if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, who are these people? What's this going to be like?
It all started with a random email. I was like, it does look like a spam, but let's just look into it.
Yeah. No, we've enjoyed it. We've honestly, we've loved the time spending in office and with everybody here. We've loved the hospitality, and the office is incredible. And we're really excited about the work that we did. We feel proud about the work we did. We enjoyed the experience. We enjoyed learning about a new industry, something that none of us knew anything about, and then really just trying to apply what we've learned over the last year to the project. And I would agree. It's honestly interesting because throughout the first year, MBAs typically are very group oriented. At Rice, they put you in predetermined groups that are like specifically chosen before you even get there. So like your first day on like what we call launch, you get put into groups that like these pre-selected groups, and that is your group for the entire year.
Oh, it's scary.
Yeah, it can be scary because like you have all these randoms. So Global Field Experience, or what we call GFE, which is our week in Brazil, this is the first time when we've actually gotten to select our groups.
Oh.
And so it's been interesting. It's been good. And you're right that we've had a really good time working with each other. And we've loved our time in Brazil. It's been a really awesome trip.
Okay, thank you so much. I think from Brazilians, it has been a pleasure hosting you here. From Dhub and from Vita, also, it has been a huge pleasure having you not only being hosted, but also working with us.
All right, obrigado.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashik. Pessoal, muito obrigada por nos acompanharem em mais um episódio. Se você ficou até aqui, foi um prazer te ter nos acompanhando. Thank you so much for your audience all the way through this episode. And if you want to continue listening, next Thursday we'll have our other and next episode on The Hub Talks. Muito obrigada e até o próximo The Hub Talks.
Obrigado.